February 2020, and you're watching The Lookout, a production of the Division of World Languages and Cultural Studies here at Minot State University. I'm your host, Samuel Stinson. On the program today, we have Robert Kibler with a new segment, What's Happening, a brief look at what's happening on the campus and in the community. We also have Erik Anderson, a professor of cello and bass here at Minot State University. We also have Efrain Amaya, an assistant professor of composition and theory, and the music director at the Minot State Symphony Orchestra, and Patti Kurtz, who's an associate professor of English and director of the MSU Writing Center. So this is a new segment. Welcome on the program, Robert Kibler.
Samuel.
So Robert, I'm to understand that we're going to talk about what's happening in the community, so feel free to talk about it and let us know what's going on.
Yeah, and I would, I guess, start with a caveat that I'm not talking about all the great things that are happening on campus, but just a select few that are on the horizon. And the most immediate of those is a black box production, theatrical production of the Minot State Theater Department. They're going to put on gruesome playground injuries. You think maybe you could bring your kids, but it's apparently a R-rated production, lots of gruesome themes. It's a two-person show. It will air in the Black Box here in Allister Theater on the 27th, 28th, and 29th at 7:30, and Sunday, the 1st at 2 o'clock. And if you don't know the history, the Black Box is a student production zone, and all kinds of edgy and experimental things typically happen there. The second event is the Campus Community Dialogue, and many of you know that for 3 years now we've seen it important to bridge the town-gown divide and identify topics that are not only of interest to people both on campus and off, but about which people have very strong opinions. And the presumption is that we'll address these hot topics and do so in a civil fashion. And we took on role of religion, role of education, legalization of marijuana, ghosts, topics such as this. On the 22nd of April, which is a Wednesday evening, we'll have Harry Hoffman from sociology, Darren Seifert from computer science, and Chad Fenner from business and marketing will be here to discuss surveillance and the role it plays in our life. And doors will open at 6:30, we'll go till 9:30, and that's in the Northwest Arts Center Gallery, Wednesday, the 22nd of April. Later on in April, we have Shakespeare Fest, and it's worth noting that the very first Shakespeare Fest put on here, according to the Minot Optimist, the paper at the time, was August 4th, 1916, where they actually had a lake out front, and they promised that the lake is well oiled and the mosquitoes have evacuated, and they decked out a boat in Tudor or Elizabethan gear and brought an entourage of famous literary figures by boat to the shore and had a maypole dance and began scenes from Shakespeare. Now, we're not that dramatic, but in the same tradition, on April 28th, 29th, and 30, that's Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we'll show 3 movies in Alshire Theater here, and we'll precede each movie with a little talk about what to look for in the movie, and we'll end with a small discussion afterwards. On the 28th, Erik Furseth will show Shakespeare in Love, which, while not Shakespeare per se, is a kind of a composite of Shakespearean scenes and themes that ends with a character who moves to a new brave world, and he'll talk about what we should look for again and a discussion afterwards. On Wednesday, Chad Gifford, who's our director of summer theater, by the way, will show Roman Polanski's version of Macbeth, Shakespeare's shortest and bloodiest play. And again, we begin with some themes to look for, and we end with a discussion afterwards. On Thursday, I'll show the Kenneth Branagh version of Much Ado About Nothing, a light, fun, comic romp, and the same thing. Cookies, juice, coffee, what to look for, and discussion afterwards. So if you're interested in any of those, you can contact me, 720-2716, and I can give you more information.
Sounds great. These sound like some great events.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for being here and telling us what's happening.
Hope to see you there.
We'll be right back. We're back with Erik Anderson, a professor of cello and bass here at Minot State University. Erik, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me, Samuel.
So one question I've wanted to ask you is, what is it that brought you ultimately to the cello and the bass, to be a performer and to do the work that you do?
I did not come into it easily. It was something that my parents wanted me to start as, I think, a means of discipline. And my dad's mother had been a professional violinist, was a professional violinist at that time. And so I think the string family appealed to them. I can recall the day where a group of people showed up with a cardboard instrument to size me, and I think it was a violin initially, but then the decision was made to start me on cello. I started on a viola so a viola is tuned the same as a cello, but much smaller. I was only 3, and so it was set on a pillow, and I was on one of those things that you might stand on brushing your teeth as a 3-year-old. And so I sat there, and that's where I started. I hated it. But I grew to a number of friendships that were important to me in junior high and high school orchestra, and then I got to college, and I absolutely fell in love with the idea of practicing, of studying, and of hanging out all day, every day with musicians who were, I thought, just the most delightful people. Yeah.
So from all of the music that you've performed over the years, is there a piece that stands out to you as being very meaningful to you?
Certainly they all are tied to the people I've shared them with. If chamber music, sharing the Dvorak concerto with the Symphony and Maestro Amaya, every piece has its own story, and the story is generally the people that you shared it with, whether the stage or the audience. So I don't know that there's one, but I could say that there are probably 2 that I've performed more often than any other, and they're not concertos, they're simple pieces that everyone loves. One is the Arioso, which is a melody that Johann Sebastian Bach wrote, and I think it's used in a keyboard concerto, and it's used in a cantata. He borrowed his own material frequently, but it was a piece that was in a book that I was studying when I was probably 12 or 13, and it was my grandfather's favorite piece, and so I got to play it at his funeral, and I got to play it for him many times. Man, I sound like I just have sadness with all my music, but it brings me great happiness to play that piece. And then the prelude to the G major suite, which it gets requested every time I pull out the cello anywhere. They say, "Do you know this?" Yes. You don't even have to say what you're asking. Yes, I'll play it.
I did want to ask also, we had recently had Micah Bloom on the program, and he had been talking about codecs.
Micah had an idea in his head, and he doesn't communicate it in the same way that like a musician would communicate it to another musician, but he had an idea, and he communicated that to Joel Collins, who was a student here at the time that was working in kind of an electronic, you just sample things and put together music that way. Some of which was him playing keyboards, other were just electronic sounds. But Micah had this idea for a chord progression, and so he just said, "We're going to turn on the mic, and here, why don't you do something like this?" And if you know Micah, he's very much like in the moment and just, "Try that, man, this will be great, try this." And so he just had me play for a while, and then he would give me maybe some feedback and try to do something louder or darker or softer or slower, or "That was great, do more of that." And so I was there for probably a half an hour recording stuff, and then 2 months later the movie premiered, and I wasn't involved in what they did with that improvised material, but it was all improvised and all just basically listening to a couple of things that Joel had said, and then just Micah kind of using me like a musical puppet. Coming up in the very near future, this weekend I'll be in Bismarck for a performance of a Robert Schumann quintet and a Borodin string quartet as part of the Missouri Valley Chamber Orchestra programming. There's also the intercollegiate band for the state of North Dakota, bringing together all the best talent from all the universities in North Dakota together for a band concert, and that's going to be hosted by Minot State. That's Friday and Saturday, and there's a concert on Saturday. And then, of course, I think Efrain will talk about this in a few minutes, but there's a Minot Symphony concert coming up on March 7th that I think has a lot to offer for this community, especially maybe those that wouldn't frequent the symphony. Fun and Games is the title, and I'll let him talk more about that.
We'll be right back. We are back now with Efrain Amaya, who is an assistant professor of composition and theory and music director of the Minot Symphony Orchestra. Efrain, thank you for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So, 2014, a film comes out, and in the soundtrack, music by Efrain Amaya. So can you tell us a little bit about the process? How did that get to be? How did that come together?
Okay. At the time, I was working at Carnegie Mellon University, and there was a professor there who actually did these films. And he had started, he actually had done a couple films about India and all kind of what people do to get around this kind of different odd jobs. Like one of his previous films was about what people do in India for lunch, and this whole way that they do lunch is like a whole commercial thing that people do in their homes. They make all these lunch boxes, and then they drive them in motorcycles to all over around the towns, delivering these lunches for everyone. So anyway, so it's very interesting thing. But he came to me asking, he wanted to do. He was doing this, filming this every year. He will go to India, where they take the ships to die, basically. And what they do in this place in India is they beach these huge ships, and they take them apart by torches. And it's one of the places where it's a very dangerous job and very well, I don't want to say slavery job, but it is such a kind of thing that nobody thinks about what goes on when they're doing breaking down a ship like this. Anyway, so he approached me. He wanted to see if I would write the music for it, and that's how it kind of got started. So I wanted to, of course, when I wrote the music, kind of have that Hindu or feeling to the music, even though I'm a Western. I want to have that kind of. So I included a lot of I would say classical Indian instruments in the soundtrack. So tabla, there's a lot of tabla or sitar sounds and all that type of things. So yeah, so it was fun. But during this filming, he was an elderly professor. He actually died. So there was a gap, and so until another person kind of took over the project and kind of finished it. So and at the end, I actually never saw the final product. I know they used my music, and I don't know how much of it they used. And I know they used because it's in their preview, the trailer. They use my music and all that, but I've never seen the movie actually. Never seen, even though they took it to all these film festivals and stuff. So it's always kind of interesting.
I was looking at How Many, A Sense of Time, Dreaming in Color, among others. How many albums have you worked with, and what was that production like?
Well, there's some that I have a lot to do with, and others that I don't, that I only wrote the music, and like ensembles will or perform them and have them in their CDs themselves. So like Dreams from Colors, flute and cello duo, that they perform a piece of mine and they include it in their CDs. So there's several of those that are like that. I guess the latest CD was all flute by a flutist, and she included all my music is included in that CD. But again, I didn't have anything to do with the production or anything like that. She just included all my music. So and it was it was great to have that, I guess, done, but I wasn't really involved in the production or anything like that. The other ones that I've done like two that I've been the producer, so to speak, and we record it, we do all the editing and all that stuff, then getting it out there, so to speak. But nowadays it's getting every year it's getting harder and harder to actually come up with actually making a CD. To us musicians, it's getting to the point that we don't know if it's worthwhile to actually make the CD, because nobody listens to CDs anymore. Either you're listening online or you're listening on via your computer, but even computers now don't even have the CD player, so it's you get to that point. So, but I think we are in a transitional state of how do we make it the same kind of packaging thing that we used to do with LPs, then CDs, and then now how do we package this to people? I know the most popular singers or what they're doing, they're making the CDs, but they're making, they tour, and you're gonna go and see the concert, then they make you buy the CD. Mm-hmm. So they're forcing you to buy the CD as you go to the concert. But I don't know if that will work very well with the type of music that we write, because again, it's just a different world. So yeah.
So let's talk about your work with the Minot Symphony Orchestra for a moment. So how long have you been conducting with the symphony?
This is my fifth year, yeah, 5 years with them, yeah. So.
And in your role of conducting with the orchestra, has there been a performance in the last few years that you think has been most meaningful for you as a conductor?
Well, I kind of, in a way, reminds me of Erik when he was talking about his dad. We did Carmina Burana a couple of years ago, and that was, at the time, my dad has been sick too. Since then he has passed, but this was one piece of music that he used to play a lot back when I was little. But that piece, it's always being a piece that I love, but I never conducted it, so we had that opportunity of doing it here, and it was kind of, in a way, again, it's kind of full circle, like you are actually doing something that you grew up listening to, and you have all this connection with it. So it does, I think it's when we start connecting with your past that makes something more meaningful, yeah.
Well, Efrain and Amaya, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thanks for having me.
We will be right back. We are back now with Patti Kurtz, an associate professor of English here at Minot State University and the director of the Writing Center here at MSU. Patti, thank you for being on the program.
Thank you for having me.
So we were wanting to talk about what writing centers are for a minute. So Patti, what are writing centers?
A place where students can come and get help from peers. So we believe, Writing Center directors believe, that peer-to-peer interaction is really super important, because if your professor comments on your paper, you're going to do what they say because they're grading you. But the peers operate from this space where they can respond as a reader, but they're not the evaluator. So it makes it so much easier for them to give feedback and for students to get feedback and to make their writing better. And one of the things about writing is it's so personal, you're so close to it that we don't see the things that we mess up or we don't get in our writing because it's all in our head. And so we read it and it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. But as soon as you get a reader there, they can go, well, wait a minute, what happens here? And you go, oh, okay, I need to put something in there. So writing centers are this nice, non-threatening space where students can bring writing, get help from peers on a variety of issues, anything from I don't know where to begin my assignment, here's my assignment, to, I don't know how to cite APA sources. So.
Do students generally get sent to the Writing Center because they need feedback on a particular work, or are they just asking for general advice?
Well, it varies, depending on the class and the professor. I send my students from comp classes as a way of getting peer response if they're not in class for that. We'll have students come in just because they feel like they need help, and then very often professors will require a student to come either because they think they need additional help or sometimes, just because they want them to work on more surface level things, which is fine, but it's not the primary focus of what we do. So it kind of runs the gamut. We also get students, and this is something some people don't realize, as long as they're an MSU student, they can come. It doesn't have to be a writing assignment for a class. It could be a resume, it could be a scholarship essay, it could be a short story or a poem. So we will get students who come in, they're writing those essays for those scholarships or something, they're like, I don't know if this makes any sense. So we get those as well.
So we were talking before the program also about sometimes there's these misconceptions that folks might have about writing centers. So what might some of these misconceptions be?
Okay, well, probably the biggest one is I'm a good writer, I don't have to go to the writing center, like as if the writing center is for only bad people who can't write. And that's not true, because everybody, I have a lot of friends who are published writers, and they have critique groups, and they have agents, and they have editors, they get feedback all over the place. You know, the myth of the solitary writer in their attic with a bottle of whiskey and a candle and a pen, that's a myth, that writers don't write like that. So, you know, any writer can benefit from reader feedback, whether you're, you know, a Nobel Prize winner or, you know, whatever, or whether you're a Composition 1 student. So you don't have to be a bad writer. It doesn't mean you're a bad writer. You just need help. Another misconception is that all we do is grammar, right? It's just, come in and fix my grammar, make my paper better. And it's like, well, I got news for you. If your paper can have the most perfect grammar in the world, but if you don't have the other things in there, transitions and required elements and good details, it's not going to be a very good paper. So we do so much more than that. And we're not a proofreading shop. I always joke with my tutors that we're not Jiffy Lube, right? Students can't drop it off and we fix it, because it doesn't teach you anything. You know, so we work with the student to help them find their own problems and show them how to fix them, different ways to fix them. But the student is in charge. It's the student's paper, so we never take over the student's paper. So I always say what Donald Murray used to say is that we don't make better papers, we make better writers, because that's what our focus is.
So how can professors get more involved in connecting their students with the Writing Center?
Okay, well, probably the biggest thing is just to recommend our students come over, even from the very beginning. We tend to get busy in waves, so we get busy like at midterm, we get busy at finals, but from the very first writing assignment a professor gives, if they say, well, hey, you know what, you know, you could take this to the Writing Center and get some help, they could offer extra credit. Requiring their students to come is sort of a double-edged sword, because yes, they'll come, but very often they won't do anything we suggest because they're only there because they have to be. So, you know, maybe encouragements like things like extra credit points or something like that. Just even letting students know what we do. And if a professor's not sure, you know, email me and say, hey, what do you guys do over there? We can have tutors based, depending on their schedule. Sometimes we'll go to classes and do little presentations. Depending on my schedule, I can meet a professor in their class in the center, but obviously if I'm teaching and I teach a full load, I can't cancel my class to do that, but I am willing to do those kinds of things. So that's another way to kind of get your class involved. Just even let them know we're down there. I mean, we're on the lower level of the library. It's now a big sort of bustling place because the academic support center is there now too. So just say, hey, you know, go down there, stop in, say hi, you know, and we just got a fresh coat of paint so we're not white anymore. So it's a really cool place just to kind of go and hang out too. So if professors would just encourage their students, go down there, see what it's all about, talk to the tutors, you know, then I think we would get a lot more traffic and the students maybe wouldn't be so intimidated or have so many misconceptions about what the center does.
So what do you think of this idea? So it wouldn't be a bad idea then, if I'm hearing you right, for a professor to say, okay, we have 10 minutes left in class, let's take a walk. We're going to walk over to the Writing Center. I'm going to show you where it is. Here's where it is. These are the folks who can give you writing feedback, and feel free to come by sometime with your work and make an appointment.
You could do that. We don't have, because we're staffed only by students, we don't have regular Monday through Friday hours. So you might come over and we would be closed, in which case that might not make the best impression.
That's true.
But I try to staff it as much as I can, but obviously there's times in the day when all of my tutors are in a class. So you might check ahead of time and make sure that there's going to be somebody there. We also have a student as an administrative assistant, so sometimes the door is open even if there's no tutors there. But they could certainly do that, and in the process show them all the other nice resources that are down there. We have the Power Center's down there, advising is down there, access services is down there, first year experience is down there now. So the lower level of the library is a lot busier than it used to be.
I wonder how many student tutors you do have as a complement.
How many total student tutors?
I always have to count. I think right now we have 6. It varies because we have a tutor training course that they have to take because, and this is another misconception that students have, is that just because you've tutored something else doesn't mean you can tutor writing, because it's very different. Like I can teach you, okay, 2 + 2 is 4, and 4 + 4 is 8, right, and that's math. But I can't tell you, okay, if you do this, this, and this, you're going to have the perfect essay. It's more of a asking questions and responding. So it's very, very different from tutoring a subject area. So we train our tutors in that class. So a lot of how many tutors we have depends on how many students are in the class. Our BSE, our English Ed students have to take the class and put in 20 hours there. So we'll have those. I'm always interested in recruiting tutors from outside of English. Right now, everybody's an English major, but you don't have to be an English major to be a tutor. I've had some comm disorders majors make amazing tutors. In the past, we've had science majors. So anybody from any field can take that course and be a tutor because they teach you how to do it. So, you know, the more tutors we have, the better. But right now, I think we have about 6. And so that's one of the reasons why our hours tend to be limited as well, because we don't have enough tutors to cover, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
So it sounds like if there are professors across the campus, across the curriculum, who would like to make a recommendation for a student to come work in the Writing Center, they could contact you, send you an email?
Exactly, yeah. In order to be a tutor, you have to have taken our 2 composition courses or have taken those somewhere and passed them with, I think, like a B. And then take the tutor training course, and it runs every semester. It's a 1-credit course. There's not a lot of work to it. It's mostly just practice tutoring. So if a professor has somebody who's a pretty good writer and they think, hey, this person might be a good tutor, send them to me, give them my contact information, send them over to the Writing Center, talk to some of our tutors. I'm a pretty good boss. I'm pretty flexible. So, if you're a student and you're a tutor and you have, I have students now that are going to conferences, so I'll take them off the schedule for things like that, which are things that they might not get if they're working at a place in town where they're like, no, you're going to be here or else, but I'll flex with their schedule. And it makes it's a resume builder, right? I get more reference requests from employers. That's something where you actually have to have some communication skills, and that's one of the things employers are looking for. So for students, it's a good advantage too.
Well, Patti Kurtz, thank you very much for being on the program today.
All right, thank you for having me.
Well, it's happened again. You've reached the end of another episode of the Lookout Podcast here at Minot State University. Thank you again for watching. Remember again, it is Minot State University. Be seen, be heard, be inspired. To play us out, Erik Anderson is going to be performing on cello.
Thank you.